Hey y'all, so this is Cdiggi Talks. I decided on that name for this concept. And for this, basically, I'm going to bring a friend on each episode to talk about a topic that I want to. Today's topic is politics, and I brought on the person who I know knows what they're talking about when it comes to that. And this is Jared. He's one of my best friends and favorite people on the planet. I've known him for 12 years, 12, 13 years.
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
So, welcome. I want to know, I should know this as your friend, but just give a rundown of your credentials as far as just education wise and what you're doing now.
So I am a PhD candidate at Duke University in political science. My research area is kind of vast. So I study everything from political behavior to understanding the concept of race and kind of how that interacts with our economic system in America. I won't get too technical for the people who are like, what the, whatever. But so that's it in a general sense. I also went to LSU Louisiana State University from undergrad. Got my bachelor's in political science as well. And I got a master's from Fordham in elections and campaign management. So I'm pretty well versed in elections as well.
In other words, y'all, he's smart. He is smart, he is kind, and I appreciate it. So of course I'm going to talk about the election. It is in 7 days, and I have major anxiety. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I've been trying to prep myself for every outcome. It's really bothering me. I feel like I'm going to have to really be sedated. I know what I'm going to do if Biden wins. I know what I'm going to do. But I don't know what's going to happen if 45 wins. But I went to vote on Saturday, and that took me 3 hours and 45 minutes. I just did it for the pomp and circumstance. I know you said that, it doesn't matter, you're in a blue state. I just felt good about it. Just going in physically, standing in line, and putting in my ballot. So you live in a swing state, North Carolina, and it depends. This election basically depends on 9 states, right? And how was your voting experience?
So my voting experience was, it didn't take me 3 hours and 45 minutes. It took me a little less than 2 hours. So in North Carolina, we've had some issues with mail-in voting. So North Carolina is an interesting state because it is a state that has had more migration into the state. I think there's only maybe three other states who have had more what they call net migration. So more people moving in than leaving. And so there are a number of people who live here who are not actually from North Carolina, and most of them are moving here because where I live in Durham, in the Triangle region, they call it, it's like a burgeoning tech area. In Charlotte, you have your banking area. So you have a lot of people actually from the Northeast moving to North Carolina, and it's kind of changing kind of the political dynamics of the state. But with that being said, it's also still the South. So you go 20 miles north, east, west, or south, and you are in 45 land. So with that being said, there is I think people recognize that this is a very important state. And so
right.
I believe I read that North Carolina exceeded its early voting numbers, throughout the entire period, 4 days into it. So we still have another, I believe, 5 days of early voting in North Carolina, and we've already surpassed that a week and a half ago. So I say all that to say that North Carolina is going to be a very politically competitive state. From most of the polls I've seen, it seems like the Democrats are poised to both win the state in the Electoral College as well as pick up a Senate seat. So there are some promising things there. But, you never know with these things.
So when you were in line, it was black, white, or just
mostly yes,
black?
You kind of did ask me what my experience was like. So it was actually pretty mixed. There were actually a lot of older people there. So there was an old black woman right in front of me, and she had her lawn chair and everything. I was like, I'm not leaving this line. I don't care. It takes me 8 hours. I ain't going nowhere.
I should have brought a lawn chair.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, so you got a little bit of everything. You got kind of younger voters, you got Black people. I mean, North Carolina is a very diverse state with respect
Hmm.
to both, not only race and ethnicity, but also age and social class. So there's a lot of kind of dynamics there.
Right. Oh, I forgot to tell y'all. I'm just gonna ask a couple lightning round questions to Jared. This is not gonna be like an hour episode, thank God. Because I hate politics, but I want him to decipher some things that I may have questions about. He breaks it down to a point where, I can understand it. But yeah, with that said, one of my questions was like, how can we be sure that like every vote is counted? And can we trust the polls? Because I feel like I can't trust the polls anymore.
So to your first question about how can we be sure that every vote is counted, my short answer is you can't. My longer answer is
Sure.
I think you should feel fairly comfortable with. I mean, obviously there are other kind of outside forces. We have to be, of course, somewhat suspicious of outside interference and things like that. But I do know a number of states have taken precautions to kind of stave off against that. So I wouldn't be that concerned about that.
Hmm.
Now, the latter part about the polls, I know a lot of people have PTSD from 2016, but as someone who studies survey research and polling pretty well, the polls in 2016 actually were not wrong. So I think it's important to kind of deconstruct this because I think it's kind of a myth that I think people kind of tap into. So if you look at the issue with polls is they're usually presented at the national level. So what they're capturing is what the popular vote is likely going to be. If you look at the poll, like Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote pretty
She
decisively.
did by
But the
over
issue,
3 million.
yes, but the issue is that when trying to count the Electoral College, it relies on state level polling. And state level polling is not as good as it is on the national level for a number of reasons. One, polling is extremely expensive to take. I mean, every poll that you're conducting is costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars for everyone, and they do
Didn't
these.
know that.
Yes, it's super expensive. It's especially expensive if you want to get a nationally representative poll. You want it to be probabilistic. So what we mean by probabilistic is we want to capture people who are more likely to vote than not. It's not just enough to be demographically representative. You actually want to try to make sure that you're capturing the population who is most likely going to vote. Reaching those people is exceedingly hard because with cell phones, it's harder to get in contact with people. A lot of people don't have landlines anymore. So there's a lot of artifacts that make statewide polling harder. I mean, less accurate than national polling. But from all indications, from what I've kind of heard and read, it seems like a number of states, particularly kind of swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, have done much better kind of raising money to conduct more scientifically robust polls. So I think we
Right.
could be a little bit more certain that they're better, but again, like it's not a crystal ball. So many of these races are still well within what we call the margin of error, which means they can still go either way. So while I err on the side of thinking Biden will win, I don't think we should necessarily kind of, breathe a sigh of relief just yet.
I just want to exhale, Lord. I really want to exhale. um, my next question is like the whole Supreme Court shit. Like I hear what's going on today. They're about to pass this pernicious woman through. I don't understand what it means when the Dems have a chance to pack the Supreme Court. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the notion of packing the Supreme Court really dates back to Franklin Roosevelt's presidency. And so back in the 1930s, I believe late 1930s, essentially FDR had a number of initiatives that he was trying to get passed. And he was dealing with a Congress that had become somewhat antagonistic towards his policies, and he was dealing with a somewhat conservative court. And so what he wanted to do was actually what they called pack the court, although that's not what they called it at the time. What he wanted to do was essentially appoint justices that would be essentially better aligned with kind of his political platform. That was immediately shut down. People didn't like the concept of tampering with the courts. So we have to remember, there is nowhere in the Constitution that says the Supreme Court has to be 9 members. So that can be changed.
Didn't know that.
Although, it just requires legislation from Congress. So it can be changed. It's just that most people rely on precedent to kind of be like, we don't want to change kind of what has been the historical kind of precedent going forward. So with respect to now, the reason that the conversation is coming back up is because what you're seeing is that, so one thing about lifetime appointments that people don't talk about much is that although, yes, it is so that Supreme Court justices are appointed for life, we have to remember that when the Constitution was drafted, life expectancy was much less shorter than it is now, and people were being appointed much later in life. So usually it was the case that people were being appointed when they were like 55 and dying when they were like 72. So they were on the Supreme Court for, 10 or 12 years. Now people are getting appointed to the Supreme Court when they're 47 and staying on until they're 80. So essentially you're there for decades. And so it kind of throws into this, a wrench into this notion of like lifetime appointment, which was supposed to be a check on the executive branch. The whole reason that you have lifetime appointments, at least in the founder's view, was that by being there for life, you're not necessarily subjected to kind of running for re-election and all of these other kind of political circumstances. But again, like this was under the expectation that people were going to be serving for maybe 10 or 12 years, not 50. Right. So now I think the reason you're seeing it kind of pop up more is because with Amy Coney Barrett getting appointed, we are going to have a court that is decisively conservative. Typically, it's been a 5-4 split. Now it's going to be 6-3, which will have grave implications for everything from access to reproductive care to potentially the Affordable Care Act. So I think people are bringing up the topic again to see if we can kind of restore some ideological balance to the court.
Right. And I'm thinking, gay rights and civil rights, period, right?
Yeah, so the issue with Coney Barrett is because she's actually she's never been a judge before, and so like she's never. I saw someone today say that she's never she's never tried a case. So like there are a lot of questions. So there's a lot of kind of question marks around where she stands ideologically. Like we can kind of point to some positions she's taken politically, but with respect to her actual like court experience, like there are a lot of question marks, but there is a good reason to believe she will be very much antagonistic towards reproductive rights. It seems like she's a religious zealot, so we can easily see the case of granting more kind of rights to religious organizations at the expense of the individual. So there's all kind of questions there that have to be hashed out.
This is so depressing. But my question is like, so the Democrats have that power to make it like more than 9, like they can make it 12 if they want.
So there is a caveat. It still requires a filibuster-proof majority in Congress. So that means Democrats we could assume that there would be no Republicans on board with this. So that would require 60 votes. So even if Democrats take back the Senate, like that still wouldn't be, they probably would only have about a 53 to 47 majority. So it wouldn't be enough. I would doubt seriously you'd be able to get any Republican people to join the Democrats in this. So in my estimation, like I almost feel like it's much ado about nothing.
So it's an empty threat.
I wouldn't say empty, but it is a hollow threat, I would say.
My next question is about the Electoral College. I just feel like, it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's archaic at this point. And I feel like, say if Biden wins and we have a blue majority, can the Electoral College be abandoned, even if we have blue all the way?
Yes, it could in theory, but this would require an even higher threshold than so when I say filibuster-proof majority. So let's think about majorities a bit. So there's a simple majority, which means you just need 51 people to pass that. There is a filibuster-proof majority, which means that you need 60 votes. So that's increasingly hard. And then to change amend the Constitution, so pass some form of constitutional amendment, you need a 2/3. So the threshold is even higher. So there's actually two ways that you can pass a constitutional amendment. You can either have 2/3 of the vote in Congress, or you can have 3/4 of all states would have to ratify, which means they'd have to adopt the measure. So both of them are hard. I mean, 3/4 of all states or 2/3 of Congress. So theoretically it is possible, but again, kind of going back to the court packing question, I don't think it is politically likely to happen.
I'm just trying to find ways to where like we're not fucked, and it just seems like the options are just fewer and fewer, you know?
I mean, short of a revolution, I don't.
Well, hopefully it's televised. My next question is, what do you think about, this is more so what we talk about on Pop Rose with pop culture, like how these celebrities like Kanye and Diddy and Ice Cube thinking they can like have the power to like change something with their like, I don't know, with their money. What is your opinion on, I'm guessing most recently, Diddy and Ice Cube? Because we know Kanye is an idiot, but what do you think about what Diddy and Ice Cube is doing?
I mean, I have an issue with anybody who thinks they can be the race representative. So first and foremost, Black people are not monolithic. We all want different things. Some of us are Black capitalists like Jay-Z, just get your dollar up, like Black owned everything. Some of us are much more radical than that. We are, anti-capitalist. We prefer more like social movements and things of that nature. So the notion that they think they know what the black community, which I think is in a lot of ways reduces kind of the variation among Black people, to me is naive. But it also lets you know that they think that money talks, and money does talk to a certain extent, but not when you were trying to essentially speak for other people. Now, I would have much more respect for them if they just use their money to just give money to people who are already out there doing the work. Like, they have plenty of organizations that they could invest in financially that frankly need the money. So to me, it is a bit arrogant for them to think that they can just like step in and kind of cut the line in front of all of these groups that have been, on the ground doing this work for eons and think that they have the answer. And so I just think that it's super problematic.
I guess my sub question is then with Ice Cube, I mean, should he be, what I'm trying to say, is the backlash deserved, like thinking that he can break a deal with Trump or whatever, or?
I mean, so I'm assuming you mean the backlash from Black people.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm of the personal belief that I feel like energy is finite, so I would rather focus my energy elsewhere. But I mean, do I think that people have a legitimate reason to be frustrated by his actions? Yeah, absolutely. Kind of like I was saying earlier, I'm like, they have people who have been doing this work. So it's not like, again, it'd be one thing if Ice Cube was like, hey, let me use my position to essentially broker something. Like, even though I may not have the answers, I know there's people out here doing this work. So let me put people in positions to talk to people who might be able to, make something shake. That's not what's happening.
But like, celebrity ego prevents that.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think that people have legitimate frustrations for kind of seeing this type of behavior, especially, like I said, there's so many people who are trying to, kind of get their voices out there and try to do the work in creating these movements. But I just personally take the view of there are kind of bigger fish to fry, so I would rather focus on other things. But again, I understand why.
Right. Is there any comfort if 45 wins again? Like, because I'm trying to like have the mindset of where like, okay, I'm going to be okay if this happens again. But is there any comfort in anything changing? Like, I'm saying, like, is it likely that we'll get a blue majority in at least the Senate and the House? Is there any silver lining
So from Got it. Okay. So from all indications, it seems like the Democrats are going to expand their majority in the House. So that's good, although they already have a pretty large, sizable majority. From all indications, it seems like Democrats will take back the Senate. It won't be, like I mentioned earlier, a filibuster-proof majority, but it'll be probably around a 52 to 53 to 47 or so majority, which, again, is better than being in the minority. If we had that distribution right now, Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't be a thing. So, I mean, it's a few seats, but it could have huge consequences. So, let's say, for instance, God forbid, 45 wins, and we're not going to speak that into existence, but it might happen. If we had the Senate and say, for instance, there was another Supreme Court vacancy, Democratic majority could stop it. They can't do anything right now in the minority. So I definitely think there are some silver linings, even if the presidential race doesn't unfurl the way we want it to. But I will say, I don't want to leave on a sour note, but I will say that I do think that it would be a mistake to assume that just because 45 loses the election, that all of the issues that we've kind of been, running around the last 4 years are just going to dissipate. Like, there are a number of issues that are still going to be prevalent, even in his absence. But with that being said, like, it will help immensely that we don't have a sociopath in the White House.
Like, I just want, like, say if Biden does win, like, I just want things to just roll back to where, we're on the right track and we're, like, respected again around the world.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely. I don't think there's any situation where a Biden presidency wouldn't be substantially better than what we're dealing with right now. But I think we have to temper our expectations. I think we need to recognize that a number of the conditions that gave rise to 45 will still be there, even if he is not in office. And so I think there are a number of things we'll have to confront, even with him gone. One thing that we're going to have to confront fairly quickly is the fact that since Congress did not pass another stimulus, there is going to be a huge, huge economic fallout from that I fear won't really be apparent until early next year. And so that's going to be something to watch politically. But yeah, hopefully, I think anything would be, a dog would be better than what we have right now.
But yeah, like, I think I was trying to, like, end my questions on, like, maybe a positive note, like maybe there's just some sort of silver linings for us. But hopefully, Biden wins. Hopefully. Do you think Mitch McConnell is going to win again? Isn't his seat for grabs?
Yeah, Mitch McConnell is definitely going to win again. He has spent an immense amount of money in that race. Amy McGrath, the woman he is running against, was not necessarily a strong candidate. She didn't do that well in the primary. I don't know if you remember, she limped to victory. There was another person she was running against, raised like maybe a third of the amount of money she raised, and she barely won. Like, it was less than a percentage point. So I think, and then Kentucky is just such a conservative state. And so I don't think that there was really, the fact that the race was even somewhat competitive for like 30 seconds was, I think, in and of itself, a surprise. But yeah, I would not bank on Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, that's the type of state I think I would have to drive slow through. I don't know, maybe we'll have like a stroke of fate, because it looks like he's been punching ice, So maybe something will happen. You never know.
So let me add one thing I said earlier. So I mentioned that the Constitution could be amended by a 2/3 vote in Congress or 3/4 of states ratifying. It's actually both. So you need Congress, 2/3 in Congress, and 3/4 of states. And so that just goes to show, like,
how hard it is to
change
the Electoral College.
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that, those were just most of the questions that I had, y'all. Maybe like later on, you could come back after the election, and maybe we can have a chance to celebrate. Also, I mean, I appreciate that Adele picture in the back too. Maybe
Oh
we
yeah.
can do like a music theme episode. I just got to think of like what topic to even say because he is just as inclined as music as I am. But yeah, thank you for coming on. If y'all have any questions for Jared, put it in the comments and I'll ask him to like go back and look at them and maybe he can answer them.
You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm always running my mouth.
Yeah, he's always running his mouth. Please tell them where they can find you on social media.
Yes, so I am on Twitter. It is JC Tiger Fan. That's JAYC Tiger Fan, just
All
as
right.
it sounds.
Okay. Yeah, and yeah, follow me. Y'all already know CDIGGI1 on everything. Make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, so make sure y'all vote. We have one more week to the election. So yeah, till next time, I will see y'all later. Bye.